The rental server program for Battlefield 5, RSP for short, has been a topic discussed within the community for quite some time now. Battlefield 1, for better or worse, tried to revolutionise the rental server landscape by taking support for it in-house, away from third-party providers, and into a place that DICE and EA could maintain control of the experience to a greater extent. The result of this wasn't met with great community support. The system lacked basic features, it was far less powerful than previous implementations the franchise had employed, it gave the renters less options, and it ended up in some cases costing renters more money to run their own communities. Enter Battlefield 5, where the game launched with no support for rental servers at all. In fact, this was true of Battlefield 1, but the service did arrive shortly after launch, I think it was a month or so I guess that can be forgiven. Plans for rental servers for Battlefield 5 were not revealed before launch, barely any detail has been released since, and the only real answer we've gotten from EA or DICE representatives is that they were still evaluating the feature, and when they had something to discuss, they'd come forward and discuss it. Well, last night on Reddit, we didn't really get that much of an update, but we got something of sorts from community manager Dan Mitri. He left a response giving us an insight into the current RSP situation from the point of view of EA and DICE. Here's what the statement said. In regards specifically to RSP, I'm going to keep it simple. You haven't seen an update in our direction with RSP because we haven't made a full decision internally whether or not we can deliver it. RSP needs to meet standards and your expectations with the tools we provide. That takes development resources. It also needs to make economic development sense. We can't introduce a feature that ends up costing more to keep maintained than it returns. I know this statement will open up more debate, and I encourage that, but this is the reality of the situation. In other words, we don't want to impact development resources of main game quality of life commitment and upcoming content by routing team bandwidth to RSP development. There's also financial implications here that go well beyond my remit. Let's tackle the former before we tackle the latter. That said, is RSP off the table? Not at all. Our teams need to weigh this carefully and either fully commit to the service or not provide it at all. And you need an official statement on what that decision is once it's been made. That's a lot to take in from one statement. There's a lot of angles we can discuss, and I'm going to do my best to analyse and cover all of the bases here. First of all, this is not a complete rebuttal of RSP. The statement makes it clear that RSP is not off the table. It's not completely dead for Battlefield 5, and it could still happen. For sure, I don't believe this statement is the answer that players were looking for, or the answer that's even remotely close to what small clans and communities wanted, but it's not a complete door close on rental servers coming to Battlefield 5 at some point. Second, the statement addresses the development cost of RSP in two different ways: manpower and financials. It seems that DICE is not confident there would be a return on investment when building a platform to host and manage rental servers in Battlefield 5. The manpower needed to design, build, implement, and then release such a system is no small feat. Let's not kid ourselves here. Game development is very difficult. It appears they'd be once again building the system from the ground up, despite having done that previously for Battlefield 1. Taking development time away from current work such as bug fixing, game balance, and new and planned content would likely take its toll on those things as well. Financials is also mentioned. The upkeep of a rental server system from DICE and EA's side is likely something that would need to be recouped through the sale of rented servers. Why build something if you're confident that you'd make a loss in doing so? In general, that's not how businesses choose to operate. However, personally, I am disappointed that this is the latest communication we've had surrounding rental servers. Previous titles within the franchise were built with support for the community to customize their Battlefield experience and carve out their own niche within the Battlefield world. This is what has kept games like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 running for so long after their official support cutoff. Small clans and small communities carrying on renting servers to give their members a home in games they love to play. This is why those players would not only continue to return to the older games, but also continue to buy into the new games within the franchise. They'd jump in, they'd start playing, work out in that game what bits of the experience they liked, and spawn another community within that game, renting more servers, supporting it again long past its official support end date. You create a really strong connection to the franchise when scenarios like that end up playing out. And the evidence is clear to see. It's really, really strong, with games like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 still having active communities of die-hard fans who just want to keep having that same experience every time they fire up the game. However, from what I've witnessed and perceived, starting with Battlefield 1 back in 2016, that vision of community customization and flavour has been scaled back in favour of a more controlled, singular experience. DICE and EA wanted to focus the community they garnered around official rule sets and official settings, so that regardless of what match you ended up in, you'd be confident of the experience you'd be presented with, rather than potentially joining a server with different rules and settings that you weren't aware of. Now, that's a perfectly valid thing to try and do, removing player frustration. However, the price DICE and EA paid for doing this was anger from the community that didn't appreciate having their options limited, and further anger as support for Battlefield 1 progressed, yet rental servers didn't get those important features that server admins really needed. Looking at the very first article that I can find for the rental server program for Battlefield 1, we see mentions of uniform experience of hardware being used to justify the change from third-party server providers and support to direct first-party EA support. While that doesn't directly address the restrictions the first-party solution was actually putting in place, or simply the lack of options the player would have when it went live, it certainly does line up with DICE and EA's vision for a, to use their word, uniform Battlefield experience. Fast forward 2 years to the launch of Battlefield 5, and that move for greater control over the gameplay experience by the teams behind the game's development is very clear to see. We now have structured weekly challenges to unlock new content, a preference for matchmaking rather than players using a server browser, a focus on cosmetic customization over meaningful mechanical customization, and even more besides. With the move of Battlefield games towards a live service system, DICE and EA are seeking to herd the active community towards different activities and experiences, in the name of keeping gameplay fresh and rewarding. This is effectively what rental servers used to provide in previous titles, but rather than having to conform directly to what the creators of the game think is the thing all players should be doing that week, rental servers would allow players to step outside of that and perhaps start experiencing the game the way they want to. Rental servers allow for custom map rotations, custom game mode rotations, variable ticket counts, different respawn timers, disabling of certain gameplay aspects, and even more. And with the right tools, the possibilities are almost endless. The Tides of War for Battlefield 5 has, in a way, completely replaced the need to provide a rental server program for the game, since the end goal of giving players different experiences is already being met. However, it's clear certain sections of the community aren't happy that the control they want, previously they had in previous titles, may not be delivered to them in this one. And to be honest, I'm really not that happy about it either. This article here from Tier 1 Esports, I've linked it down in the description, says that the statement from EA and DICE could spell the end for rental servers within the Battlefield franchise for good. It says that many of the communities within the franchise were built around the ability to customize the experience by running servers differently from the official rule set. And if those tools don't return, then it's the end of the road for these groups. They'll cease to exist because they're unable to operate properly. If that turns out to be true, then it'll be a really sad day for Battlefield, and I already know of many clans and small communities that have ceased to exist because of the situation we had in Battlefield 1. Besides that, and this is a really good point, Tier 1 esports article points out that DICE went to the effort of implementing a much more powerful spectator mode for Battlefield 5, also including a broadcaster preset. Why would you bother going to all of that effort and then not follow it up with the implementation of rental servers, where organised matches and events could run and be shoutcasted? Something just doesn't quite add up here. With this most recent update now in mind, I personally believe that whether RSP gets implemented or not, that's purely going to come down to financials. Do EA and DICE want to spend the extra money it'd cost to build a platform for rental servers, and are they willing to potentially lose money if the system is not well utilised? From that statement, Dan makes it clear that that side of the debate is well above him, and it likely rests at a much higher level within the DICE studio and within EA as a publisher. But let me put forward my final opinion here. A rental server platform should be implemented for Battlefield 5. The value that something like that can add to a game is absolutely massive. Again, I'll point to Battlefield 3 and 4 as brilliant examples. Their lifespans have gone well beyond what I think even the community expected them to be, pushing on closer to the decade mark now for Battlefield 3. That's absolutely mental. The community is supporting the series because the series offered the support to them. The community adds value to the game because the game gave them added value. I think that's worth preserving and taking forward for Battlefield 5 and the future of the Battlefield franchise. Yes, it might cost money to make RSP happen for Battlefield 5, but DICE and EA run the risk of losing an extremely dedicated core segment of their community if they don't make it happen. Clans and smaller communities won't have the tools they need to create their home within the game, and they've been loyal enough to hang around as long as they have, waiting for an answer. If DICE and EA don't offer the support to the community that wants rental servers, then why should the rental server community continue to support EA and DICE on this franchise? It's a two-way street. That's my opinion on this, but do you know what's even more important? It's your opinion. You outnumber me. I am just one person giving my opinion, and there are going to be lots more than one person watching this video. Whether you're a supporter of having rental servers in the game or not, the only way DICE and EA can know what the community at large is thinking is if the individuals speak their mind. Leave yours in the comments, go onto Reddit and speak with other people on there, put out your opinions on social media, go onto the official forums and talk about it, and just give your opinion. Like I said, the only way they're going to know what the community's really thinking is if everybody within the community voices their opinion on these topics. And I think this one is really, really important. But thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in another video soon.